Happy Friday, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm really excited today. We have an amazing speaker, super knowledgeable and amazing human, Susan Cotner, and she is the executive director for the Affordable Housing Partnership Homeownership Center in Albany, New York. She is also the executive director of the Albany Community Land Trust, and she's also the lead contact for the Capital Region NYSERDA clean energy hub. So she's not busy at all. um, she also just recently got recognized by the City of Albany Human Rights Commission with a Human Rights Award because of her decades of work in connecting people with affordable housing and building up communities and well-being in the city of Albany. So we are in amazing company, and I'm looking forward to all the information that she's going to be able to provide you all. Just before we get started, a couple quick housekeeping things. The contact information for our executive director, Joe Culver, is here. Please follow us on LinkedIn. Also, all of our affordable housing sessions are recorded on our YouTube channel, as well as the additional training that we do on cybersecurity and other educational things. And you can also visit us at our website at newyorkmba.org. So I really, really look forward to continuing to work with all of you and appreciate you being here. I will switch to the next slide, maybe. I can't get it to go forward. Anyways, the other quick slide is just a call to action. This is our, oh, thank you. This is the week that we start our drive for the Mortgage Action Alliance membership. This is free and easy to sign up for. So you just go to Mortgage Action Alliance on the MBA's website, and they will send out calls to action. There's also a lot of information on the website in terms of proposals that will impact the mortgage industry, things such as low-income housing tax credits and trigger leads and other bills that are important to us. So New York MBA is your voice in New York State, and the Mortgage Action Alliance is how you connect with the national MBA to have your voice heard at the federal level in DC. So hopefully you all will take a moment to join that and take action on the things that they send. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can have a conversation with Susan. Thank you, Susan, for being here. Welcome.
Thanks for the invitation.
All right. So I'll kick us off with a quick, can you walk us through the key ways that housing counseling agencies help individuals prepare for successful homeownership?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks to all the seasoned professionals that are participating today. I recognize many names of folks who've been in this business for as long as I have, and for 35 something years. So thank you for being here, and thanks, Sherry, for the invitation. Yeah, so I think housing counseling agencies, we see ourselves as a value add, helping get first-time buyers prepared for home ownership. And it can be as simple or as extensive as, just connecting people with down payment assistance resources, and really, with the goal of reducing obstacles to getting qualified for the best mortgage products that are out there. So we love meeting with people very, very early on in the process, helping families have the highest credit scores possible, make sure they have sufficient savings, make sure they're document ready, right? That they've got clean bank statements and tax returns and everything that you need to help. And I think just generally, it's helpful for families to hear from a variety of different messengers about the home buying process and how to get ready. So they're clearly hearing and learning a lot from you as loan officers and mortgage originators. They hear a lot from their realtor, clearly, but sometimes words are just said differently and heard differently from housing advisors. And so I just encourage people to do all that research so they could be prepared. So.
Yeah, and I think you all are trusted messengers within your communities. You do a lot of great work, and because you're a nonprofit organization, there's a separate level of trust because they know you're not trying to sell them anything. So, okay, what does homeownership readiness mean, and what role do you see education and financial counseling playing in that journey?
Yeah, so I think our definition's probably different from everybody else's. We all have that definition. What's home buyer ready? And for us, I always pitch ourselves as being fairly conservative financial advisors, right? We want families to have $10,000 saved. We want them to have lived their proposed mortgage payment for a good 6 to 8 months so that they know that that's something they can comfortably afford. We want them to have the strongest score they can have, with clean documentation. So to me, it's mostly importantly, it's the savings and the credit readiness to buy.
And if someone's looking for a housing counseling agency in their own community, where should they start?
Yep. So again, HUD has a really great resource where you type in your zip code and you can find a list of counseling agencies in your area. And so I'll find the chat and I'll put that in there. But people, I'm sure, are already pretty familiar with the HUD website to use. Yeah.
And how can mortgage lenders work more closely with housing counseling agencies to support low and moderate income borrowers?
I think, we obviously, the people that we want are the folks that are not ready to buy. So as soon as you're running into somebody who just seems to have an overwhelming credit obstacle or zero savings, we want to work with you as early on in the process so that we're not a reason why somebody gets delayed or they've got just so many issues towards the end, when they're already under contract to buy. So early is good. That said, we do offer fast track counseling services. Most agencies will. If you've got someone who's coming in and they really need help qualifying for that loan product that requires housing counseling or needs that down payment assistance program, right, that needs housing counseling, we can limit our involvement to, let's review all your closing statements. Let's make sure that you've had a home inspection and that you've got access to resources after you buy to help you improve your home and that type of thing. So, so for that. The other thing I'll just say is that in terms of working with mortgage lenders, the best thing that is communication. We hear about the great programs that you all have to offer. And then sometimes the communication ends and we don't know if the program's still available and that type of thing. So, and I'm sure we could do a better job of letting you know about any programs that we are aware of. So just that ongoing communication, I think helps us both serve first-time home buyers.
Yeah, and from personal experience, can say that borrowers who have gone through homeownership counseling, one, we know that they're more likely to successfully perform on their mortgage, but two, originations are expensive, and companies right now margins are getting narrower and narrower. And somebody who comes from a housing counseling agency has, like you said, become document ready. They've been connected with down payment assistance and resources, or contractors and renovation scopes, or different things if the house that they're buying is going to need work, and they've been acclimated to the budget. So it's really, you're kind of handing them a fully processed loan that's going to be much less expensive to originate and much more likely to perform after closing. So so I think the service that you provide is important. It's just sometimes people don't know where to get started or how to find you and start working with you. Are there any common misconceptions about housing counseling that you'd like to dispel, especially from the perspective of lenders or policymakers?
Yeah, again, I guess I already hinted at, we don't like to be obstacles to someone closing on their home, so again, the earlier that we can get involved in the process, the better. And then I guess the other thing is that there are programs that help people of all incomes. So a lot of our, again, the majority of our customers are low and moderate income first-time home buyers. But we do have a pretty good smattering of people who are just looking for more information. And we can link them to, in the Albany area, for example, there's 3 or 4 grant programs that can assist folks with higher incomes. So we just want to make sure they're not missing out on an opportunity to, have a more affordable payment and, more successful ownership, as Sherry was just saying. But I guess, I also want to open it up, we we want to make sure that if people have any questions. For example, in Albany right now, kind of our average, which isn't a great metric, but an average sale price is $212,000 in the Albany, New York market for the folks that we work with and get grant funds to. Those families are still coming up with out-of-pocket money of 9 grand, 10 grand. And so that's again, an average of who we're working with. So it's not only the families that are looking for the elusive $125,000 sale priced home out there. We are working with a little bit higher income folks these days.
Yeah, and I think there should be a push for housing counseling for all in terms of, just like you would sign your child up for driver's ed. This is great information for anybody to have going out into the world, and it's not something that a lot of people readily are communicating with their children or learning in schools or things like that. With new state repair grants and other funding sources becoming available, what should lenders be paying attention to in terms of timing, eligibility, or coordination? Are there any upcoming opportunities you think lenders and housing counselors should be preparing for together? Understanding obviously that we're in volatile times and
Yeah. 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 You all know that a starter home is something that's typically an existing property and it needs repair. And so I think at the time of pre-qualification, it's really good to remind buyers as they're starting their housing search that they should also be asking around about what kind of home repair grants might be available after they buy. So for example, in the city of Albany right now, we have up to $40,000 to help, low-income families, moderate income families rehab their homes. And so if they're getting a house and it looks like it clearly needs a new roof, it'll get through your systems in terms of being something that you'd be willing to put a loan on. But just to make them feel reassured that once they buy, there are some resources out there to help them do those, health and safety improvements to really upgrade their property. So again, I think at pre-qualification stage is a really great time to help kind of set the time frame of there's no perfect house, but there might be some help after you buy. So that's you already know that. But again, they're just if you check in with the housing agencies in your territory, it feels to us and to you, I know that programs come and go. There's another thing to keep in mind too upcoming is that a lot of first-time buyers do look at 2 to 3 unit properties in order to gain some rental income to help them afford more of a house. And there is the new lead paint rental registry out there, so that if people are buying, so for example, in our neck of the woods in Albany, Schenectady, and Troy, they are going to need to get a certificate of compliance with lead paint stabilization rules before they can rent out their units. That could be a huge and costly expense. So again, just need to remind people that are coming in looking to buy, the 2s and 3s, that's something to be on the watch for. Find out if their community where they're buying will be in those target. I think there's 25 communities in New York State where this rental registry, lead paint registry will be required. So just make sure that folks are aware of that. New York State is, I believe, making some money available to help landlords make their homes lead safe. Again, that's not that they have to abate all lead, but that they have to make sure there's no chipping, peeling paint. Sometimes a nice thing about lead abatement programs is that they frequently will fund the replacement of windows, change out those old wood lead caked windows with new replacement ones. So
yeah.
that's oftentimes a huge value add to your first-time home buyer that they know are aware of those programs being available to help them improve their property.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't also add that there are renovation loan programs available that would allow people to finance the cost of some of those repairs into the mortgage, anything that's not already covered by state or other grant funds. So I'm going to shift gears for a minute. I also just want to remind everybody that we want this to be a dialogue. So while we do have, I've prepared some questions in anticipation of trying to pull as much knowledge out of Susan's um, brain and as much wisdom from her as I can. I want to open up the floor and make sure that everybody else feels comfortable to ask questions. So feel free to use the chat liberally, and we will be monitoring it for any questions that come up. And I'm going to shift gears, if that's okay, Susan, to talk a little bit about NYSERDA and the energy hubs. So I know you're leading the regional clean energy hub for NYSERDA. Can you give us an overview of what the hubs are, what kind of work they do, and how recent funding cuts may be impacting your team's ability to reach and serve households?
Yeah. So NYSERDA, which is New York State's Energy and Research Development Authority, which manages a lot of the incentive programs to help New Yorkers make their homes more energy efficient, and also potentially access incentives to create their own energy through solar and geothermal and that type of thing. So NYSERDA set up 12 regional hubs. So every corner of the state is covered by a clean energy hub. And our goal is really to, just as we have housing advisors, we have energy advisors now that are working with property owners, including landlords, although it's a little bit more difficult to work with landlords, but working with homeowners on a home energy assessment so that they can evaluate ways to improve, like I said, energy efficiency. The things that NYSERDA loves to pay for is stuff like attic insulation, rim joist insulation, and that type of thing, because those have been proven to be most effective in reducing somebody's energy use, and therefore also the cost of their energy bills. The second most important thing that they look at is what's the status of that heating system, and are there ways to upgrade the efficiency of that existing heating system to something so that again reduces the amount of energy needed to heat that home. So our job as energy advisors is to assist households in applying for those resources. I'm going to say again that NYSERDA offers incentives. They very rarely, in most cases, they do not fully fund the complete work. And so a lot of it is coaching families about other ways to fill that gap, whether it's through home repair programs or low-cost personal loans, home equity loans, and that type of thing. I will say that NYSERDA does have a loan product, but generally working with you on home equity loan, your lender, your financial institution on home equity loan is a less expensive option. So that's what we've been coaching people to do if they have a gap. Critically important on the energy side, though, is that before you can go in and insulate your home, you do definitely need to make sure that you don't have any roof leaks, you can't have any asbestos in your home, or mold, because you don't want to tighten up a house and have all those contaminants, making you sick.
Mhm.
So that complicates the energy efficiency work a little bit. And again, we've been working pretty hard to try to find what they call wraparound money, these additional resources so that projects can get completed and the asbestos abated and that type of thing. So in terms of funding cuts, that's where we're starting to see some issues. The federal funds are drying up a little bit at the, well, drying up completely at the EPA. That was to have been a resource for us to be able to do asbestos abatement and mold abatement, that type of thing. So, but yeah, again, we as hubs throughout the state have been asked to primarily focus our work on low-income families, but clearly there are programs for anyone of any income. And so we try to have that information. We're supposed to also be smart about, electric vehicles and, helping nonprofits and municipal governments make their buildings more energy efficient. But we really have found it, that it's our mission. We've really dived in on the mission part about helping low income families. It's the primary focus that we've had as our hub. So.
Awesome. So in light of all the budget reductions, how has your approach to outreach or program support changed? Are you having to make tough choices in prioritizing services or audiences?
Yeah, so right now, NYSERDA is putting a little bit of a throttle on some of the projects that they're incentivizing. So we'll go out, we'll get somebody signed up, they'll get their project approved, and then NYSERDA is just managing the number of projects that can proceed and move forward. So that has been very difficult because, again, as you all know, nobody likes to be told when they're trying to get a new heating system, in October, that they have to wait 3 or 4 months before the incentive funds will be available to help them make this energy efficient upgrade to their home. So we are a little concerned that people are just going to move ahead and replace their existing system with the least costly system they can, and that will result in more, in energy inefficient projects moving forward. So the state's a little bit in flux. We did just, the state budget is still being unpacked a little bit. There was just a recent ruling yesterday from the Public Service Commission about how they are managing utility funds and other sources of money that NYSERDA has to incentivize energy efficiency improvements. So we don't really have a good handle on everything and how things are going to look. Maybe we'll have more clarity by the end of the year in terms of how the programs are actually going to run out. So bottom line is, the energy hubs are available to try to stay on top of this and to, if you've got a home buyer that is purchasing a home that needs an updated heating system, or they've been told by their realtor that the utility bills are crazy, that's exactly the customer we'd love to talk to and see how we can connect them up with some incentives and resources to help them upgrade their homes. So.
Yeah, and that's this next question that I had, you've kind of touched on this a little bit in terms of, what types of energy upgrades are households pursuing, and are you seeing any trends around technologies like heat pumps or insulation or gaps emerging in what's realistically accessible to families?
Yeah. So it's been really interesting in this field because as much as we want to electrify and go to clean heat, and there's actually state laws to make us do that, the Climate Protection Act, they also have this overriding goal or need to make sure that energy remains affordable. And so the state is not incentivizing people who currently use natural gas to heat their homes to switch over to heat pumps or to all electric heat through heat pumps. Right now, the NYSERDA incentives are really out there to help people who are using what they call delivered fuels. So that's oil, propane, um, kerosene, whatever, or electric resistance heat. Those are the families that NYSERDA will incentivize a switch from delivered fuels to all electric heat pumps because there is going to be a savings. And so, Sherry, this is probably where I can maybe share the couple of slides. I have 2 or 3 slides that I can share because it's easier to talk about uh, the math here with some examples as opposed to just giving you a bunch of numbers. So I'm going to use my house and show you kind of how the incentives have come into play to help. And I'm sorry, I'm not making a slideshow out of this because I think I'll lose you when I do that. But the I had oil in my little house, oil heat. And so I switched to a heat pump system. I was lucky because I already had a forced air system. And so really all they did was install a heat pump in the place of my old oil boiler, which was on its last legs. And for those of you who are interested in converting, that is something that we really do stress is that the best time to consider moving to new technologies and heat pumps is when your old stuff is ready to kick the bucket, right? When you know that next year you need to change out your system, that's when you should consider switching technologies and not not really before. So the cost to install a new heat pump system in my little 1,200 square foot house, $22,000. Through the utilities, and this is still currently available, there is a clean heat rebate, and it's based on the size of the system that you install. So that clean heat rebate comes right off the top. And the nice thing about it is that your contractor, the contractors know how to access that. So your borrowers, you guys, if you're thinking about it, you don't need to apply for that. Your installation contractor will take care of that for you. And then there is up at this minute here, it's 12 o'clock, 12:30 on today, there is a 30% federal tax credit for doing a conversion to installing a heat pump. And so it's up to $2,000, and it's a super simple thing that you do on your income tax return. You fill out an additional form. They want to know if you installed a system, and then you apply for the $2,000 tax credit. So Sherry asked, what's under threat? It's this 30% federal tax credit. That is part of what was called the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. The great energy bills that were advanced during the Biden administration, those are all being eyed to be dramatically cut back. They've been approved by Congress, so they're still in effect. And it's not until this next budget bill that goes through that they will be probably eliminated. And that's what we're being told, is that the Republican Congress will likely eliminate all of these tax incentives. So the important thing is that my total net cost was, $16,500 to install electric heat pumps. Again, for low-income families, that still exceeds probably the cost of just swapping out an old, inefficient heating system. So that capital cost is a huge barrier, and that's really what the energy hubs are trying to help families think through and address as to whether or not it's a good fit for them. So again, as you all know, capital costs is one aspect of it. The operating costs are different, and we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so the sweet spot is when you combine heat pumps and solar, because now I've reduced technically the amount of energy that I'm using to heat my home, but I'm also creating energy, right? I'm now purchasing solar power by putting solar panels on my little house. And that's helping to offset my national grid bill. So here's where the real savings are from the different incentives. So the cost to install these 15 panels, $23,000. NYSERDA and New York State offered two incentives, a solar incentive and also a tax credit up to $5,000. And so I was able to take advantage of that. And then on top of that was this 30% federal tax credit. So I was able to cut the cost of installing the solar project in half, thanks to these terrific incentives to help me produce energy, in essence, and reduce my dependence on the grid, if you will. To heat and electrify my home. So I'm sorry, I'm going to make you look at a couple of graphs here, but one of the things to be aware of is this, this is kind of my energy use. And certainly in the winter months, the impact of having a heat pump means that my electricity use has gone up pretty dramatically, right? Because now I'm all electric heat. The thing that this graph doesn't show is that now I've got a zero oil bill, though. I'm using zero oil to heat my home. It's just kind of been displaced, if you will, by electricity. These orange features here reflect how much solar energy I've produced to offset this increase or my use of electricity. So of course, my favorite month is this September, when I had the smallest national grid bill I have ever had in my life, thanks to the impact of the solar energy I produced. And really, it's those shoulder months, right? I'm not using too much electricity to heat my home. So this is the real benefit. And so when you think about how it did cost me significantly more to install a heat pump, it's being offset because I was also able to, with all those great incentives, install solar and really reduce my national grid bill. So again, my cost of electricity when I had oil, and now my cost of electricity when I had solar panels, peaking again in the winter months because that's when I use a lot of electricity. But overall, saving a couple $1,000s a year in energy costs because I'm taking advantage of that. And so that somehow has to factor in as the way to pay for the improvements, if that makes sense. I'm saving so much money on my operating costs that that's offsetting that higher capital cost that I had to install. So I know that that answers Sherry's question completely. And that's not really what you wanted to know about, but I think it's helpful to look at how we have to, it's complicated and we're trying to communicate these opportunities to low-income first-time home buyers, and really they are the ones who could potentially most benefit from the program. So I just wanted to share that in case that it motivates you at all within the next 15, 20 minutes to try to apply a project before the federal government decides that they no longer want to incentivize clean heat.
I love that you went through that example. I think it's amazing, and I do think it's inspiring. And I think it's important for these folks. Out of curiosity, and this is a little bit of a left field question, but it's just coming through my mind. Weatherization, like New York State weatherization, do they factor in or provide any assistance for some of the lower income folks?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, is that again, what gets a little frustrating and confusing to all of us is just the number of different programs out there. So NYSERDA, New York State, has some energy efficiency programs. And again, a lot of that funding comes from the utility companies and from the state budget. But there are also weatherization assistance agencies. There's one in every county that gets funding through New York State, which accesses the funds from Department of Energy. So it's really a federal government program that filters through the state to the counties. And so they also are available. They are assisting lower income households. And sometimes the two programs, the NYSERDA program that we help promote and the weatherization program, they can combine, not happily or easily, but we try to leverage it when we can.
Yeah. And just to close the loop on something that you mentioned earlier about the $40,000 home improvement grants, those would be things that, like, if somebody were to try to do these types of improvements, even though they're not specifically green grants for home improvements, you could use those for these type of improvements, right?
Yeah, generally probably not solar because that wouldn't necessarily be considered kind of a health and safety improvement, but definitely to help fund the gap for heating systems, which clearly is, or a roof repair, which is required before insulation can be added to an attic or whatever. So the other thing that has been part and parcel of all this are electric panel upgrades as well. Again, if we're electrifying homes, we need to get that 200 amp panel in. And so that's been a big piece of just kind of the whole house picture when we look at energy efficiency and electrification. So.
Awesome. And for lenders, contractors, or housing professionals who want to partner with the clean energy hubs, what's the best way to engage with the clean energy hubs at this point?
Yeah, so there is a website. I didn't think to pull that up, but there is a website. If you just search for NYSERDA Clean Energy Hubs, it'll probably take you right to that NYSERDA page with the primary contact for each of the hubs throughout New York State. So I think we're all trying to be better about having a decent website and social media presence and that kind of thing. Most of us are extremely anxious to be invited to speak about all these grants. So again, if there's ever an opportunity to come out and, or you know of a group of people that you think might be interested in this stuff that we could drone on and on about, like I am right now, yeah, definitely, you want to reach out to us and we'll be happy to show up.
I love it. I appreciate it. So I'm hoping that you'll get some phone calls. You'll definitely be hearing from me for more speaking things. Can you give us well, you've kind of gone through the snapshots and rebates that are still most commonly available right now.
So again, I think that the New York State managed funds are still available, and New York State remains very committed to energy efficiency and beyond, right? Trying to meet those climate goals, that's still a priority. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of the funds that New York State manages for this work are utility funds. So if you look at your utility bill, you have something called an SBC. It's a systems benefit charge. That's something that every New Yorker with a utility bill that's not a municipally managed utility pays into this account. And those are the funds that are then basically offered back out to help lower income families, upgrade and reduce the energy demand, right? So that we can become more electrified. Yeah. So yeah, I'll leave it at
Right.
that.
And you mentioned that, obviously we know that the federal incentives are right now in flux, and um, it feels a little like they're going to be going away in the future. So, putting my legislative committee chair hat on, I would urge everybody to reach out to your representatives and let them know that this is an important thing. Okay, so looking ahead, what are some of the biggest opportunities you still see to scale affordable homeownership, even as we face new constraints and funding cuts? And how can we make the most of the incentives and resources that remain available?
Yeah, so this is where I'll get a little bit on the soapbox as if I haven't already been on a soapbox. So I do think that when you look at, where is our affordable housing stock, it's in the neighborhoods right now. It's probably and most likely our existing housing. It's very difficult to build new. I don't have to tell you this, and make that affordable. It takes a lot of subsidy. So what my wish for Albany, and I'll speak from that perspective, is that, there's more programs to help families buy existing properties, upgrade them, where they already live. We work with tenants every day, right? Tenants who want to become owners. And we would love for them to buy in the neighborhood where they're living. Um, I have seen fairly recently, though, more, I'd love to see, this is my wish, that the investors that flocked upstate from New York City during COVID and that type of thing, a lot of real estate investment. People were looking for places to park money. You all know that. And the cash buyers, a lot of those are starting to turn back over to first-time buyers, I'm seeing with some of the grants that we manage. And that is a super hopeful sign to have local ownership because it strengthens neighborhoods. And again, just this is the soapbox part. If I could get our elected officials in Albany to really appreciate, the great housing stock and the great opportunities for home ownership in our existing neighborhoods, and provide some more incentives to help them buy in communities, that would be hugely helpful for so many reasons. So part of the work that we do with the Albany Land Trust is to build communities, build neighborhoods, make the West Hill, lower income communities, the Arbor Hills, the South Ends, desirable places to buy. It's affordable. Yes, these homes need a little bit of upgrade money. And how can we do that? But then how can we just continue to support owners to buy in communities? And I do think that if we can figure that out in cooperation with local governments, state funding sources and you guys, that would be so beneficial on so many different levels. right? It helps that first time buyer. It stabilizes neighborhoods and really builds wealth that way in our community. So that's the scaling I'd like to see happen. I've always had a bias towards acquisition and rehab of properties. We're very blessed to have a strong Habitat for Humanity, which is specialized in new construction, on the vacant lots, which, again, our municipality has had quite the history of just tearing stuff down and not figuring out how to rehab it. And so that's something I guess I'd like to figure out how we can work cooperatively on building up the existing communities that we have.
So, as part of research that I had done for testimony that I did for Senator Sanders on kind of like property values in minority communities, one of the things that I saw was, you know, a lot of times because the schools are funded by the tax base and you're looking at a lower income population in some of these communities, the schools suffer as a result of that. And then you also have a lack of access to, healthy food and large employers and different things like that. And in a lot of cases, these neighborhoods are abutting factories or other things that are putting toxins and impacting the health of the people that are living in those neighborhoods. So, are you seeing more kind of cross sector planning, trying to address all because obviously the housing stock's only one piece of
Right.
the whole puzzle.
Yeah, there's definitely been in our area, the thing that people have been pushing on quite a bit have been kind of workforce development programs, right? So that folks can get access to good paying jobs that will enable them to buy a car to get out to those locations where they can get something that's good paying. We definitely, the neighborhoods that we are working in are definitely food deserts, that's for sure. Um, we're not quite the same kind of factory town, we're government and education and medical services center and that type of thing. So we haven't felt that, those kind of factory pollution issues quite as much. But nevertheless, it's, again, the important thing that we always ask is that, we just keep talking up these communities as being resilient and communities of strength. One of the things that I get frustrated with, again, this is a soapbox thing here, with this, the state, is that they're calling the neighborhoods where we're working and trying to build up and rebuild, disadvantaged communities. And so why would any first-time home buyer ever want to live in a disadvantaged community? So it is a lot of, when you name it like that, how demoralizing is that? And this is so as you develop programming to target neighborhoods, where we are looking for reinvestment, if we can find a better way to call it, even I think even just targeted communities, you're making a targeted reinvestment in a neighborhood to build it up. And so labels do impact that. So all right, I gotta move on from my. So
What would you say to a lender or nonprofit who wants to better support equitable access to energy efficient home ownership but doesn't know where to start?
yeah, I do think that the nonprofits are trying to get a better handle on that. And to me, always the easiest thing is that, money talks, right? It's always easy to just tell someone, you want to look into this resource. This could help you save money, right? And so again, so just by talking it up as being something to consider and explore, I think helps a lot just to have that conversation, that there are grant monies to help with down payment assistance. There are resources to help with energy efficiency, and that will make your house more comfortable and affordable. It's a key component to your costs of living, stuff like that. So
Yeah, and we got a question in the Q&A from our friend Ellie Pepper. How can lenders and banks support the great work being done by housing counseling agencies like AHP? Thank you, Ellie.
yeah, thank you, Ellen. Yeah, no, we are really fortunate to be able to partner up with many of the folks that are on this call. I know to to teach education seminars, to be available to speak with some of our first-time home buyer customers who just need that extra hand holding and that type of thing. So um, I know that Ellie, working nationally, is trying to help support nonprofit agencies like ours look at ways that we can actually more formally partner with lenders in terms of looking at fee for service opportunities and that type of thing. That we've always loved the Federal Home Loan Bank programs because they did recognize the opportunity to provide a $500 counseling fee to agencies who help prepare buyers. And I can't tell you how important that is. You know, toward the beginning of that program, with the match savings program, our agency alone was getting about $40,000 a year just from having that kind of institutionalized with the Federal Home Loan Bank grant that we could receive that funding. That requirement doesn't exist anymore. So now if we get $7,500 a year from participation with the Federal Home Loan Bank program, so that's that's half a person, half a full-time equivalent, if you will, that funding loss. So again, if there is that opportunity, that certainly would help a lot.
And what's one thing you wish more people understood about the interconnected work of housing counseling, energy affordability, and community development?
Yeah. um, again, I think we're all working in the same space. We're all working for the same goal, right? Is to help someone build wealth through ownership. And there's so many different features of somebody's housing budget that come into play there. And so it all does get interconnected. And importantly, I think, people need to hear it from a lot of different sources. And so again, I truly value the folks on the call who are coaching first-time home buyers. That needs to happen and continue. And it, again, we just encourage that first-time buyers get a broad take on the opportunities out there.
Right. And can you explain what a community land trust is for the folks on the call that might not know?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're very fortunate to have been organized by a group called United Tenants of Albany back in the 1980s, late 1980s, who were very concerned about the impact of gentrification on housing affordability, right? And that housing prices were running away. At that point in the ancient days, right, interest rates were, 11%, and people were kind of freaking out about that. Um, so it was a fairly new program. Now, 35 years later, it's a lot of communities have community land trusts with the sole intent of helping to preserve affordability for that next generation of home buyers. And the tool that they use is the most complicated real estate tool that exists. And so I always feel a little bad that that it gets set up this way. But essentially a land trust takes title to a property. We secure grant funds from a lot of different sources to renovate it and make it a beautiful home. And then we sell it at a reduced price so that somebody who doesn't have a lot of choices can afford to buy and become an owner. And the land trust separates the land from the building so that the home buyer is buying the building only. And the community group, which is a neighborhood-based group, it's homeowners and tenants together with other Albany residents or whoever's in your community that owns. Together in common, we own the land. And there's this 99-year ground lease then that governs that relationship so that the home owner, the owner of the building, has exclusive right to that land. We do not mow their lawns when we come out. So the goal is that when they do decide to sell, the ask of them is that they agree to sell to another income eligible family at an affordable price. And so the ground lease basically governs that resale. So again, it's a complicated mechanism. We're very fortunate that Sunny Mae recognizes that. I think Freddie Mac may have I think I've closed on one Freddie Mac loan for a land trust in the 35 years I've been doing this. So we're fortunate for that. And again, folks, in our example, we're still spending $250, $300 to update and renovate a home and then trying to sell it for 150. So that's obviously a starter home. It's really making ownership affordable. Families get their equity back. They always get that $150,000 back and then the share of the appreciation. So they do build wealth. We've had a lot of really successful buyers through that program. So thank you, anyone who's working with us on that program.
Yeah, and there are community land trusts all over the state. There are ones that are concentrated in specific communities. There's a lot of scattered sites. And then there's some that are, I mean, there's one in New York City, the Interborough Community Land Trust, which is a coalition of multiple organizations similar to Affordable Housing Partnership. But it has been a successful tool that hopefully we can scale up or use more in order to try to protect communities from gentrification in a lot of ways. So in your work, how have you seen the CLTs collaborating with your housing counseling agencies, lenders, or land banks? And are there models or partnerships that stand out in terms of those those collaborations?
Yeah, so it takes everybody, it feels like to move home ownership along in this way. So again, the land trust and the partnership was a HUD, which is a HUD approved counseling agent. We're co-located. And so we're trying to make it look a little seamless to, that first time home buyer that's coming in the door. But definitely folks need to be coached. They're buying a different type of home, right? It's a different kind of arrangement. And so that is critically important to us that they have their own legal counsel, that they have their own home inspection done and try to have all those protections in place for them so they know fully what they're getting involved in. So it's really critically important to have well-advised customers purchasing a land trust home. So again, we try not to we try to make it seamless for the buyer, but also make sure that they've got good third-party protections, as they move forward with their home purchase with that. I will say that in Albany, we've been fortunate. We have land banks, different from a land trust, right? The land bank, which is kind of a creature of the county here that takes title to tax foreclosed properties. The land trust has purchased properties from the land bank to renovate them and then make them available to eligible first-time home buyers. So that's been a great partnership. And then just another type of nonprofit to throw in the mix that's a critical partner of ours is our CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions. We have here in our building the Community Loan Fund of the Capital Region,
Yep.
and we borrow money from them all the time. To do our work, as a nonprofit. That's the only kind of lending they'll really do is to nonprofits. And so we access their capital, patient capital to help us while we renovate the home to get ready for sale. So sometimes CDFIs are easy to participate in. We're lucky here in the capital region because anyone can make an investment in the community loan fund and then have those funds in which you earn interest like you would in a conventional investment. Then the loan fund uses those funds to invest in community projects. So that's a great way for individuals, and a lot of financial institutions in our area do participate and invest in the community loan fund.
Yeah, they are great to work with. One of the nonprofits that I work with that did transitional housing for domestic violence victims, we got financing for one of our properties through Community Loan Fund, and they were amazing to work with and very fair in terms and, yeah, excellent and a great resource that we have here. And for those who are not located specifically in Albany, there are similar CDFIs all over the place. Susan, do you know like where, because obviously we have the HUD website for finding housing counseling and we've got the NYSERDA hubs, but do you know where they could find CDFI in their area?
Is it OFN is the national group for that? And I'm not even gonna know what
Youth
that
Opportunity
stands
Finance Network.
for. Yeah, but there may be even a Department of Treasury list of certified community development financial institutions as well. So I don't think they've eliminated that part of it.
Yeah. Well, and in the famous words of Bill Teague, who I see joined from Sunny May, if you have any questions at all, you can always contact your local housing counseling agency because they will be able to show you the money and tell you where you can access, the resources that you need to get the funding that you're looking for. So, does anybody else have any questions? I cannot thank you enough, Susan. I learned so much, and I think this was a great conversation. Everybody who is on now, this will be available on our YouTube channel in a couple of days if you want to share out the links for anybody who may have missed it. And Susan, thank you so much. Do you have any like parting
No,
words or?
again, obviously we appreciate so much the partnership with all our financial partners. We couldn't do it without you, and just really are grateful to connect up, and just always appreciate the conversations.
Yeah, and definitely reach out to your representatives. And oh, hang on, something just popped up in the Q&A. Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah. Reach out to your representatives, make your voices heard. And if you have any questions at all about, how to find your representatives or anything, feel free to reach out to me. And I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you again, Susan. This was awesome.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Take
Yep.
care, everybody.